A broken chair scraped against stone. A serving girl flinched. 2,000 wolves filled the great hall, and not one looked at her. The feast horns roared. Silver plates clattered. Wine spilled like a red tide. At the back of the hall, alone on a cracked bench, a girl in a torn gray apron counted the hours on her fingers. She had been ordered to serve and vanish. She had been told her name did not belong on any pack roll. Her name was Lyra Vance. She was 20 years old, and the bond on her wrist had gone silent the night her pack cast her out. Why was she sitting at this table? Why had the kitchen master pushed her into the hall instead of leaving her in the scullery? She would know in 4 minutes. Stay with me on this one. The hall was called the Throne of Iron Pines. It was older than any pack alive. 12 stone pillars held a roof so high that hawks nested in the rafters. The royal feast happened once every 10 years. Every alpha had to kneel once and rise once. And the alpha king had to walk the length of the hall before the second course, so every wolf in the kingdom could see his face. Lyra had never planned to be in the hall. She had planned to wash dishes. She had planned to keep her head down for 9 days, take the small pouch of copper coins the kitchen master had promised her, and slip out the eastern gate. She did not want to be seen. 6 months ago, she had stood in the moonlit clearing of Crescent Hollow Pack and waited for the mate bond ceremony. Every Omega before her had walked out with a name on her skin and a wolf waiting at the edge of the trees. Lyra had walked out with nothing. No name. No mark. No wolf. The pack elder had called it a curse. The pack alpha, a heavy man named Boren, had called it shame. Her mother had not looked at her. Her father had handed her a thin coat and pointed at the road. She had walked for 3 weeks. She had slept under bridges. She had eaten cold roots and burned crusts. Then a kitchen master in the royal city, a woman with iron gray hair and a limp, had pulled her off the street and said, "You can wash. You can chop. You do not speak." For 6 months she had washed pots until her hands cracked. She had been invisible, and invisible had been enough. Now the kitchen master had pushed her into the hall with a tray of bread. Now she had pointed at the cracked bench at the back, the bench no pack would sit at, and said, "Stay there. Do not move. Do not look up." Lyra had obeyed. Believe me. She had been training for invisibility her whole life. Omegas in Crescent Hollow were not warriors. Omegas served. Omegas mended. Lyra had been told from the time she could walk that she would be claimed by a quiet farmer wolf, or by no one. The feast around her was a roar. Alphas in dark velvet stood at the head tables. Lunas in silver gowns laughed behind painted fans. Stewards moved between the tables with platters of roasted boar and silver pitchers of dark red wine. Lyra kept her hands flat on the bench. She counted the seams in the wood. 12 seams. She counted them again. 12. She counted them a third time, because counting was a thing she could do, and looking up was a thing she could not. At the high table, a beta in a black coat with a silver chain across his chest leaned forward and stared at her. She did not see him. He stared for a long time. Then he leaned to the beta on his right and whispered 3 words. The whisper traveled down the line of black coats, 12 of them, 12 old men with 12 silver chains, and each one nodded in turn. The drum stopped. The hall went quiet. The horn sounded a single low note. The great oak doors at the far end of the hall slammed open. Cale Dravenwood, Alpha King of the continent, walked in. He was 28 years old. He had worn the silver crown for 6 years. He had refused every highborn she-wolf paraded before him on every feast night of those 6 years. He was tall, and his shoulders were wide under a long black coat trimmed in wolf gray. His hair was dark. His eyes were the color of cold steel. He walked the length of the hall without looking left or right. He walked the way a man walks when he is looking for one specific thing and has been looking for a long time. 2,000 wolves stood up. 2,000 wolves bowed their heads. Lyra bowed hers too, because that was what you did, and because she was very good at obeying. His boots came closer. She heard them on the stone. They did not stop at the high table. They did not stop at the center dais. They came past the third row of tables, and the fifth and the seventh, and they kept coming. The hall held its breath. 2,000 pairs of eyes followed the long black coat down the center aisle, all the way to the back. All the way to the cracked bench. All the way to the girl in the torn gray apron. The boots stopped one pace from her bench. Lyra did not look up. She could not. Her wrist, the bare wrist where no bond mark had appeared 6 months ago, began to burn. A hand entered her field of vision. A wide palm calloused along the edge, a thin white scar across the knuckles. The hand turned palm up. "Stand," the Alpha King said. His voice was low and very calm. It carried to every corner of the hall the way thunder does. Lyra did not move. Her wrist burned harder. Something inside her chest, something that had been silent for 6 months, began to hum. "Stand," he said again. Not louder. Just again. She stood. Her knees shook. The hand stayed open in front of her. She did not take it. She did not know how to. The Alpha King watched her for a long moment, and then he turned slowly to face the hall. "That girl is my mate," he said. The hall did not breathe. It did not move. It did not blink. Then it broke. Some packs dropped to their knees in a single motion, fists pressed to the stone, heads bowed all the way down. Some alphas roared in protest and slammed their goblets on the tables. Some lunas pressed their hands to their mouths. The 12 betas at the high table did not kneel and did not roar. They sat very still in their black coats, and they looked at each other, and the oldest one, with a white beard cut square, lowered his hand under the table and tapped his fingers against the wood. 1, 2, 3. A count. Lyra did not see the count. Lyra did not see anything except the wide palm in front of her, and the burning under her skin, and the great oak doors at the far end of the hall, which were closed now, and which she would have run through if her knees had let her. "Walk with me," the Alpha King said. Lower. For her only. She walked. She did not know how. Her feet moved. Her torn apron dragged on the stone. He led her up the long center aisle. The hall began to murmur, a sound that grew. By the time they reached the high table, the murmur was a roar. At the dais, the Alpha King stopped. He turned her by the shoulders so the whole hall could see her face. Her hair was loose. Her cheek had a streak of flour on it from the kitchen. Her gray apron had a small burn from a hot pan. She was the smallest person in the hall. "Hear me," the Alpha King said. "I have walked this hall for 6 years and seen no face that was mine. Tonight my wolf has spoken. The bond is on her. The bond is on me. There will be no question. There will be no contest." A voice from the high table, a beta voice thin and old, said, "Sire." "The girl has no pack." "Then she has mine," said the Alpha King. "Sire, the girl is an Omega." "Then I will have an Omega Luna." "Sire." The girl was cast out. The Alpha King turned his head slowly. He looked at the beta with the white square beard. The hall went quiet again. The beta did not look away. He held the Alpha King's gaze for one long breath, and then he lowered his head a single inch. "Not a bow. An acknowledgement." "Then I will bring her in," said the Alpha King. "Tonight. Before the second course." He turned to Lyra. He put one knee on the dais. He raised her hand, the bare wrist, the wrist that had been empty for 6 months. He pressed his mouth to the inside of it. The bond mark bloomed under his lips. It was silver. It was a crescent inside a circle. It glowed once, very bright, and then settled into her skin like a brand cooling. The hall did not move. Lyra did not move. Somewhere behind her, the kitchen master, hidden in the dark of the scullery doorway, began to cry. The feast ended at the second drum. The Alpha King rose and offered her his arm. He walked her out through a side door, into a long stone corridor lit by torches. 2 guards in silver mail fell in behind them. Halfway down the corridor, he stopped. He turned to her. "What is your name?" he said. "Quiet. For her only." "Lyra," she said. "Lyra Vance. From Crescent Hollow. They cast me out 6 months ago." "I know," he said. She looked up. For the first time, she really looked at him. His eyes were not as cold as she had thought. They were tired. They were old in a way that 28 years should not be. "How?" she said. "I have been looking for you for 6 months," he said. "My wolf has been awake every night since the moon you were cast out. I did not know your face. I knew your bond. I have ridden every road in the kingdom. Tonight I walked into the hall and felt you in the back of it before I crossed the threshold." She had spent 6 months telling herself that no one would ever look for her. She had been wrong. "I do not want to be a queen," she said. "I do not know how. I will fail. Send me back to the kitchens. Pretend it was a mistake." "It is not a mistake," he said. "And I cannot send you back. The bond is fixed. You feel it." She did feel it. She could feel him in the corridor, the way you feel a fire in a cold room. "Then teach me," she said. "Teach me how to stand in that hall without shaking. Because right now I am shaking, and I do not want to die at the end of a feast." He nodded once. "I will teach you. Starting tomorrow. Tonight you sleep. There is a room. There is a guard. No one will touch you." She believed him. She did not know why. If you are still with me, hit that subscribe button. There is more coming, and the second half is where this turns. The room he gave her was 3 doors down from his own. It had a high window with iron bars across it, and a wide bed under a gray wool blanket, and a small fire in a stone hearth. Lyra stood in the middle of the room for a long time before she dared to touch anything. Then she sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the silver crescent on her wrist for an hour without blinking. She did not sleep. She listened to the guard's boots in the corridor, ringing back and forth in a slow pattern. 12 steps one way, 12 steps the other. In the morning, Aluna came for her. A woman in a long blue gown, with iron gray hair pulled into a heavy braid. Her name was Maeve Dravenwood. She was Cale's aunt. She did not smile. "Stand up," Maeve said. "Walk to the window. Now walk back. Slower. Head up. Eyes on me. Higher. There." That is how Aluna walks. Lyra walked. Her legs shook. Maeve walked her back and forth across the room for an hour. Then she taught her how to enter a hall. Then she taught her how to sit beside a throne. Then she taught her how to look a beta in the eye for exactly 3 seconds and then look down, because 3 seconds was respect and 4 seconds was a challenge. "Why are you doing this?" Lyra said near the end of the first day. "You do not like me." "I do not know you," Maeve said. "Liking has nothing to do with it. The crown is on Cale's head. The bond is on your wrist. If you fall, he falls. If he falls, the kingdom falls. I do not want a kingdom to fall in the year I should be retiring to my garden." Lyra almost smiled. Maeve almost smiled back. Neither of them did. The second day was worse. Maeve brought a tailor. The tailor stuck Lyra 47 times. Maeve brought a steward who taught her the names of the 12 great packs and the 12 beta counselors. On the third day, Kale came for her himself. He wore a plain dark coat, no crown, no chain. He had a sword on his hip. He led her down a stair into a small stone yard with a packed dirt floor. "You will not need to fight," he said, "but you will need to know how to stand. How to not flinch when steel comes near your face. That is the only lesson today." He drew the sword. He laid it flat across his open palms. "Step closer," he said. She stepped closer. Closer, she stepped closer. "Now do not move." He raised the blade. He brought it past her cheek. She did not move. He brought it past her throat. She did not move. He looked at her for a long moment. "You have done this before," he said. "No. You have. Someone has held a knife near your face, and you have learned to be still." She did not answer. He set the sword aside. He turned her wrists over and looked at the small white scars across her knuckles, scars she had stopped counting. "Believe me," he said, "you will not need those scars again. Not while I am here." She wanted to believe him. She almost did. Now here is the thing. The Beta Council had been meeting for 3 days too. Not in the Great Hall. Not in any room with a window. They had been meeting in a low chamber under the eastern wing. 12 old men in black coats with silver chains. 12 seconds in command, each one the right hand of an alpha who held a great pack. They had spent 40 years sharpening their bloodlines for a queen they had picked out in their own minds. An Omega queen had not been in that picture. The white-bearded beta, whose name was Aldrich Thorne, sat at the head of the long stone table. He tapped his fingers in a slow count. 1, 2, 3. An Omega queen weakens every bloodline we have spent generations building, Aldrich said. Our packs will lose status. Our heirs will lose marriages. I will not allow it. I have not served 11 kings to die a footnote under the 12th. A beta on his left said, "Then we move." Before she is crowned. The third night of the feast, Aldrich said. After the second drum. The Alpha King will be at the long table. He will drink the wine we have prepared. He will not finish the second cup. "And the girl," said the thin beta. Aldrich said very calmly, "The girl is silvered. The girl is taken alive if possible. The girl signs the abdication scroll in his name. If she will not sign, the girl is silvered too." Aldrich set down a thin silver knife on the stone table. He set down a small green glass vial beside it. He set down a rolled scroll with a wax seal already prepared. "Tomorrow night," he said. "Tell no one. By dawn we will have a king of our own choosing." The 11 betas rose. They bowed once. They left through 12 different doors. In the small stone yard above them, Kale was teaching Lyra how to walk 3 paces behind him when she did not yet know a room, and 3 paces ahead of him when she did. Neither of them heard the door close below. The third night of the feast came faster than Lyra was ready for. Maeve dressed her in a long silver gown with a high collar. The collar had a silver pin shaped like a crescent inside a circle. The same shape as the mark on her wrist. Maeve fastened it herself. Maeve's hands were steady. Lyra's hands were not. "Listen to me," Maeve said very quiet. "Something is wrong tonight. I do not know what. I have been a Luna for 40 years. I know what wrong feels like. Stay close to Kale. If he stands, you stand. If he sits, you sit. If he tells you to run, you run. Do you understand me?" Lyra nodded. Her throat had gone dry. The hum under her ribs had changed. It had been a warm hum for 3 days. Tonight it was sharper. Tonight it was a low buzz, like a wire pulled tight. The hall was fuller than the first night. The 12 beta counselors were already at the high table. They stood and bowed exactly the right depth. They did not smile. They were a row of black coats with silver chains, and they were waiting. The first course was served. The drum beat the first hour. Kale lifted his goblet. He paused. He did not drink. He set the goblet down very carefully. The drum beat the second hour. The second course was served. Kale did not touch his wine. He ate slowly. He spoke to her in low voices about the dishes. He talked the way a man talks when he is keeping a room from looking at his hands. At the high table, Aldrich Thorne lifted his own goblet. He drank deeply. He smiled, very small, very slow. Then he set his goblet down and tapped his fingers on the wood. 1, 2, 3. The torches along the eastern wall went out at once. Every one of them. The hall fell into half dark. Boots moved. Steel rang. The doors at the eastern entry slammed open. 12 men in dark hoods came through them at a run, silver knives drawn, eyes fixed on the high table. Kale was already on his feet. His sword was already in his hand. He had drawn it under the table while Aldrich was tapping his fingers. Lyra had not seen him draw it. She only saw the steel catch a torch on the western wall as he brought it up and across in a single arc that took the first hooded man across the chest before the man could reach the dais. "Stay behind me," Kale said. Lyra did not stay behind him. She did not know why. She had spent her whole life staying behind people. She had spent 6 months staying behind kitchen counters and scullery doors. She had been trained every day of her life to step back. And now, with the hall in half dark and steel ringing on stone and Aldrich Thorne rising from the high table with the green glass vial in his hand, she did the thing she had never done. She stepped forward. The hum under her ribs split open. The mark on her wrist flared silver bright. Something inside her, something the old pack had spent 20 years beating down, woke up and stood up and bared its teeth. She felt her wolf for the first time in her life. She felt it the way you feel your own heart when you have been holding your breath and finally remember to breathe. Aldrich was moving toward Kale's seat with the vial. A second hooded man was moving toward the back of the dais with the abdication scroll. A third was moving toward Lyra with a length of silvered chain. Silver, the metal that burned a wolf. Lyra did not run. Lyra picked up the heavy iron candelabra from the dais and swung it at the third man's knees. He went down. The chain hit the stone. She kicked it the whole length of the dais until it slid off the edge and clattered into the dark. "Lyra," Kale said. His voice was rough with surprise. "Behind you," she said. He turned. He cut down the second hooded man before the man could unroll the scroll. The scroll fell open. The ink was already dry on every line above where Kale's hand was supposed to sign. Aldrich reached Kale's seat. He raised the green vial. He did not see Lyra coming. She crossed the dais in 4 steps. She picked up Kale's untouched goblet of wine. She threw it. The goblet hit Aldrich's hand. The vial flew. It hit the stone. It shattered. A thin green smoke rose up. Aldrich stared at his empty hand for 1 long second. Kale was on him in the next. The fight was short. Aldrich had not held a sword in 20 years. Kale disarmed him, broke his wrist with the flat of the blade, and pressed the point of the sword to the silver chain on Aldrich's chest. The chain parted. It fell to the stone. "Aldrich Thorne," Kale said. His voice carried to every corner of the hall. 2,000 wolves had risen and were staring at the dais. "You have raised silver in my house. You have raised silver against my mate. You have drafted my abdication without my hand. By the law of every king who has worn this crown, your chain is broken and your life is forfeit." Aldrich did not speak. He looked at the green smoke rising from the broken vial. He looked at Lyra. He looked at Lyra for a long time. "You are not what I thought you were," he said. Quiet, only for the dais to hear. "No," Lyra said. "I am not." Chaol did not kill him. Chaol handed him to his guards. The guards took him through the eastern door. The 11 other betas at the high table stood up. One by one, they unfastened their silver chains. One by one, they laid them on the long table. One by one, they knelt. Not to Chaol. To Lyra. The hall did not breathe. Lyra stood very straight. Her gown was torn at the hem. Her hands were trembling. The mark on her wrist was bright as a small moon. She did not know what to say. She looked at Chaol. Chaol did not move. Chaol was waiting. She turned to the hall. She lifted her chin. She heard Maeve in her head. Head up. Eyes on them. 3 seconds. Then look at the next one. Rise, she said. Her voice was small at first. Then it found a place to stand. Rise. There has been enough kneeling in this hall tonight. Rise and sit and eat. The feast is not finished. The 11 betas rose. They sat. They did not eat. They watched her the way old men watch a storm they had not expected. The 2,000 wolves in the hall slowly lowered themselves back onto their benches. The stewards came forward with fresh torches. The third course was served. Chaol sat down beside her. He did not touch her. He looked at her for a long time. "You stepped forward," he said. "I did," she said. "You had a wolf in you the whole time." "I did not know," she said. "I did not know until tonight." "Your old pack did," he said. "That is why they cast you out." The bond did not go silent. The bond was waiting for me. They could not control a wolf they could not name. So they told you that you were nothing. So you would not go looking. She thought about Boren, the heavy man who had pointed her at the road. She thought about her mother who had not looked at her. She thought about 6 months of bridges and burned crusts and pots and onions. She thought she should feel angry. She did not. She felt very tired. She felt very awake. She felt for the first time in her life like a person who was sitting in her own chair. The high priest came up the long aisle. He was a thin man with white robes and a small silver bell. He stopped at the dais. He bowed to Chaol. He bowed deeper to Lyra. "Sire," he said. "Luna. The bond is witnessed. The mark is sealed. The crown is yours to set when you choose." "Not tonight," Chaol said. "Tonight she has earned a quiet hour. Tomorrow at dawn. In the clearing of the iron pines. Before the sun is high. With every great pack present. The crown will be set then." The high priest rang the bell once. He walked back down the long aisle. Lyra leaned a little closer to Chaol. Only a little. Not enough for the hall to see. "I do not know how to be a queen," she said. "I still do not. I do not think one feast has changed that." "You do not need to know how to be a queen," Chaol said. "You only need to know how to stand next to me when the hall goes dark. And you have done that already." She breathed out. She breathed in. The hum under her ribs settled into something low and warm. Aldrich Thorne was held in a stone cell for 30 days. He was tried by a council of 7 alphas and 7 lunas. He was stripped of his name and his pack. He was sent to the southern border to live as a common watchman. On the day of his sentencing, he asked for one short audience with the Luna. They met in a small stone room with one window. "You are not what I thought you were," he said again. "No," Lyra said. "Neither were you. You thought you were a man who had to break a kingdom to save a bloodline. You were a man who was afraid of a girl in a torn apron." He nodded once. He left. The 11 other betas were not stripped. Chaol let them keep their chains with conditions. They were placed under the supervision of Maeve for 1 year. They were required to attend every council meeting with the new Luna. Lyra was crowned at dawn in the clearing of the Iron Pines. She walked into it in a silver gown. She walked out of it with a silver crown set lightly in her hair. The great packs of the continent watched. Chaol stood beside her, 3 paces away, where a king stood when he was letting a Luna be seen. She sent a quiet message south to Crescent Hollow the next week. She did not call them to court. She simply sent a single line on a small scroll. "I am alive. I am claimed. You will not see me again." Boren received the scroll and read it twice. He folded it and put it in a wooden box. Lyra did not go back. She did not need to. She had a new clearing now. She had a new hall. She had a wolf inside her that woke up every morning before the sun and stretched, slow and warm, under her ribs. She kept the kitchen master at the palace. She gave her a small house in the eastern garden and a pension and 3 young helpers. The kitchen master showed up at the palace every morning and inspected the bread. The bread improved. A year passed. The 11 betas slowly learned to bow to her without flinching. Some of them began to trust her. Maeve retired to her garden. Maeve wrote a long letter once a month, and Lyra read every one of them twice. The mark on Lyra's wrist did not fade. It grew a little brighter every year. Chaol's mark on the inside of his own wrist was the same shape and the same silver. On a winter evening, a long time after the feast, Lyra walked out alone onto the high balcony above the great hall. She stood at the rail and looked down at the rows of empty tables and the cracked wooden bench at the back, which she had asked to be left exactly where it was. 12 seams in the wood. She thought very quietly about the girl who had sat on that bench. The girl with the torn apron. The girl who counted seams. The girl who had been told for 20 years that she was nothing, until a door slammed open and a king walked the length of a hall and stopped at her broken chair. She had not become a different person that night. She had only met the one she had always been. She turned away from the rail. She walked back into the warm room behind her. Chaol was waiting. The fire was high. The kingdom was quiet. The bond hummed under her ribs, low and steady, the way a wolf breathes when it is finally home.